Another draft physics presentation. Comments again. Yeah. So, but if people are going to type this stuff, I'll respond to it as long as it's somewhere close to reasonable. And this isn't very reasonable. Anyway, correct the record, he calls himself. You stated at the start of these experiments, that these experiments weren't ever repeated is a lie. Your statement. Okay, comment. At the start of these experiments, no, that's not right. At the start, that these experiments weren't ever repeated is a lie. Okay, comma there. The editing experiment was repeated, he says in capital letters, several times. Here is the most recent one. So this is apparently done, he published it on his blog in mid-February. So I was supposed to be aware of a thing published on a blog in mid-February. He submitted it to some sort of quantum thing, paper, magazine. It hasn't been published, and you can't access the article. So you can't get any details whatsoever. And he provides none in his blog. So I'll go to his blog, and so in this thing he quotes a couple of sections from the blog. I'll quote some different ones. I'll read some different ones. He doesn't put quotes on all of this, but all of this is the guy's from the guy's blog. He doesn't quote it sufficiently. But anyway, so he says, say what you will about how to interpret the results. Yeah, there's a lot to be said. I mean, it does matter, okay? There are certain rules you have to follow when you're doing an experiment, especially an experiment that's already been done and you're going to repeat it. Then you probably should try to advance it, not degrade it as an experiment. So, anyway, you can't say they don't exist. Well, again, I don't have any knowledge of them existing, so I'm just stating where's the evidence. So we still don't have a published evidence of lensing. You're saying this guy did it, but there's no published results. There's no evidence to peruse. There's no methodology even much to peruse. Okay, and this recent one follows Einstein's prediction as well as it could by today's standard. So again, you say so. You say that today's standard is, well, I'll go into the details. I'd say that's not today's standard. Today's standard is doing things better, not lazier. Okay. You also once made the complaint that no observation of this was done by the Hubble telescope. This isn't the same. Well, so you're going to tell me that something's not the same. So I make a statement that yes, the Hubble telescope is the best instrument possible to do this stuff because it doesn't have any of the limitations of earthbound telescopes, and it can look right next to the sun without hurting itself at all, and it could observe things from, especially when we're talking about observations of suns that are more than one solar radius from the sun. Now, I would argue that once you go one solar radius away from the sun, you don't really have a chance of detecting this lensing, so you're already in big trouble when you're that far away. I don't think the math is forgiving enough, but regardless, just play your game. Okay. Okay, this isn't the same, but there is a similar mission mapping out the entire sky. So you say that this almost theoretical tunneling telescope, is somehow the same thing as a Hubble image. And I'd say it's nowhere even close to the same thing. If gravitational lensing exists, there's plenty of places to find it in the universe, and it's not in those places where you'd expect it to be, and it's not in a form that any rational person would expect it to be in, because once again, let's just point out, for people who don't get the obvious, okay, a traditional lens is shaped exactly the opposite, okay, of a enlarging lens. Okay, when you want to make something bigger, you use a convex lens because it bends the outside light to a focus. This is a gravitational lens. Okay, less bending on the outside, more bending in the center. It's exactly the opposite of a lens that makes things bigger. Exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. I mean, for those who don't really understand this argument, you should be able to understand that the lens is backwards. It's inside out. It doesn't capture light and send it to a focus. That's not what a gravity well does, because it takes the light that comes in towards the middle and pushes it out. Okay, all right, and it takes the light that comes on the sides and goes straight. No bending on the sides, lots of bending in the middle. Shit. Okay. So anyway, so he says, okay, so that's a quote from the Hipparchus thing. We're not bothering with that. If the measurements, so here he says, if the measurements out of 5 solar radii, so he says this Donald Burns guy did his measurements at 5 solar radii. That means you have to divide the traditional number, you know, Einstein's number of 1.75 arc seconds, I think it is. You have to divide it by 5 then. So they're detecting 5 into 1.7 is something like 2.2 arc seconds of deviation, which is really a small amount to be detecting. Aren't enough. How about the entire sky getting warped to within microseconds? Well, again, says you, I think there's, if lensing exists, we should be able to find better ways to prove it than obscure, bizarre, theoretically manipulated, software enhanced, you know, we looked at the whole universe and unjiggled it bullshit, and we say it's lensed. Alright, you can't make an honest argument. Now, see, you can't. Alright, these aren't complex things, right? I point out how Hubble telescope can do it. Hubble telescope hasn't done it in 10 years. It could look at stars right next to the sun. It could see them. Hubble telescope has the resolution power. Well, it doesn't have to take an 18-second exposure either, you know. It's big enough that it doesn't have to take long exposures. So it could actually see a sun go forward and backward, being lensed. It could take a good video. It's so fucking big. And it's looking through such a clear atmosphere. And it doesn't do it. And there's a reason it doesn't do it. It's because it's not there. Okay. Can you make an honest argument? So again, you're the one, I think, being totally dishonest without invoking false premises. And what's the false premises? You know, he says, I fail. No, I think you failed to provide, again, evidence of anything. So again, you're claiming you have the evidence. You're claiming you have the proof. You can prove it's unreasonable to doubt our brilliant science. And yet your evidence is vacuous and absent. So here's the guy's blog. Okay? Not one of his images are on the blog. Not one. This is an Eddington glass plate image. So he can post the image from Eddington, a 1919 image, okay, of the eclipse, and he's not posting any of his own. He says, I got great images, yet he didn't post one single image of his own images. Not one single one. Not from the location he took it from. Nothing. Nothing from the experiment at all. Not one piece of evidence that the experiment even took place besides his testimony. Not one image. Not one image. Not one image from the site. Not one image of his telescope cemented to the ground. Not one image of a single fucking thing. Okay. This image isn't from the site. Clearly, I would argue. This is his little backyard thing or something. So, okay, it says, getting ready the morning of August 21, 2017. So I guess apparently he said cemented. It doesn't look cemented to me. But whatever. Regardless. I think he meant glued. He glued the tripod down. Okay, well anyway. Alright, so we do have one image. But obviously it's not an image collected by the telescope. And it's not a remarkable telescope if you look at it, right? It's like a 5-inch telescope. You know, I think somebody could have used a 12-inch reflector or something. Would have been a better choice. But regardless, whatever. So I'll read. The key to success in this experiment was to plan ahead and practice. So, all right, let's understand. So let me just get to the part where he says his little spiel that I find bizarre. Okay, yeah. Okay, here we go. looking at the images, I could see all the stars I was hoping for. So he didn't post a single image. We got 45 images. This was another thing a little bit strange. 45 images that were supposed to be 18-second long exposures in 3 minutes. That doesn't really add up. So the only way that could happen is you had to have the camera set to take more than one image at a time, which means the resolution of the images would be half what the camera was capable of collecting. And I don't think any rational person would say, I'm going to take some high resolution images of stars and I want them to have half the resolution. I think they would rather have 20 images at high resolution than 45 images at low resolution. Logically. Okay, looking at the images, I could see some of the stars that I was hoping for, plus a lot more. Using modern software helped me complete all of the analysis in just a few months. Let's understand what the analysis incorporates. The analysis is merely going, you have your image, and you're really just looking for a pattern of stars. So a star that you really like and you want to use, and plus reference stars. So at least 2 other reference stars. So you have 2 reference stars in your star, and you're just looking for in the exemplar the same pattern, and then you're just going to measure the differences in the distance to see if this star is out of place. So your reference stars hopefully are in less gravity than the one you're trying to measure. Obviously that would make sense. Okay, and that's all you're trying to do. There's nothing months worth of work and blah blah blah. So this is all computer manipulation is all he's saying. And the truth is he didn't take any exemplars. So he's using software, a software image of the universe. So he's comparing his images to a software image of the universe that's synthesized from images taken at different locations, not where he was. You know, the whole point of it is you got to take your exemplars from the same location so you get the same view of the universe. So, you know, if you tilt the angle, different angles, then the stars line up at different distances. So you need to take the exemplar, the controls have to be from the same position. If you're taking from a different position, you'll get a different view of the star field. Slightly different. And slight differences are really important here. Alright, so let's just read the rest of this crap. Alright, using modern software helped me complete all of the analysis in just a few months. I decided ahead of time that I was going to follow a certain procedure and would not go back to delete stars or add stars in order to get a better result. Oh gee, that's just so charming of you. Again, the very fact that anybody would even consider adding or deleting stars to get a better result just demonstrates that what the hell were you thinking you were allowed to do anyway? Why would that be allowed? And why wouldn't you do multiple stars? I used only stars that gave good signals and were not distorted by corona or neighboring stars, which says absolutely nothing. I used both Maxim DL and Astronomica software to measure the precise positions of the star image. So where are we, right? What planet are you on? The software isn't the precise image. The whole point is that you're supposed to, if you're going to do the editing experiment, you're supposed to do it the way editing did it, which is you have to take photographs 6 months later from the same location. They used different, or 6 months before. He said he planned this for 2 years. He didn't plan on taking exemplar. He didn't plan on taking control images from the same location. They used different methods to do the calculations, quote unquote, and because I had no reason to prefer one over the other, I planned from the beginning to calculate the result from both software programs. So apparently it's almost impossible to understand exactly what these programs do exactly. What's their intent? You scan in an image of stars and they tell you what stars they are, or what's exactly the gimmick? Alright, and then the average of the two numbers. So he uses 2 different pieces of software to do some sort of, somehow he's letting the software figure out whether the stars are in a different position, which isn't anything like the Eddington experiment, which the Eddington experiment is you basically look at your 2 images, superimpose them, and see if the distances are off. This led to an amazingly accurate result, says you, and says no evidence of any of it. Alright, so he just pointed out, I don't know where the 5 arc second thing came from, but anyway, obviously this image doesn't even have the bending happening. Can you see the image? Yeah, you can see it good. Alright, it doesn't even have the bending happening in the right location. I mean, nobody would look at the surface of the sun and expect to see anything right next to the corona, anything that would be accurate. That would just be scatter, and that would be diffraction. So you would look as far away as you could without getting so far that there's not enough gravity to bend the light. But you want a clear view. And at one solar distance, one radius, okay, that's almost on the surface. That's in the corona. So you have to be at least a solar radius more away. So you have to be 2 solar radiuses away before you're clear of the corona. And, and then you're talking about a 0.5 arc seconds, or 0.7 or whatever. So just complete. I mean, there's nothing here. I'm supposed to be convinced by this. This is your absolute proof of something. There's no proof here. We don't have anything but this guy's nice little story. Here's my little story of doing an experiment. That's all it is. It's a story of him doing an experiment. And apparently, if he's using this 1.75 arc seconds, that means he did use a sun that was in the corona of the sun. It was 1 radius, because you divide by how many radiuses you go away from the sun. You divide that 1.75 micro arc seconds number by how many radiuses away you are. So he was 1 radius away. He found a star that's just right on the surface of the sun, essentially right where the surface of the sun would have been. So, come on. Bullshit, I call. Doesn't sound kosher. I don't think anybody else on planet Earth, if I picked 1,000 astronomers and I had them do this experiment, I don't think there would be one besides this guy who, if they successfully did the experiment, wouldn't be publishing at least one of their images. But not one image from his experiment. This is what we get. Not one image. Do you really find that at all plausible? I did the Eddington experiment. I did a 100-year-old experiment that proved Einstein right, and I've duplicated it, and I did it so well, and I got great results because it was great weather and everything went great, and I don't publish one single image? And that doesn't sound at all bogus. Like, oh yeah, no way I would do that. No, that image would be, my image would be the first image on the page. Look at this fucker. Look at the stars I got in this image. It's a great image. Fantastic. 10,000 stars in the image. Fantastic resolution. You see that here anywhere? Nowhere. Nothing. Totally not exactly the kind of evidence I should just say, oh yeah, that's, you got me, you finished it. Yep. Proof all over the place. No. Proof still non-apparent. Still not produced. And again, because I say you haven't demonstrated it, you haven't provided me the link to the experiment being repeated, not just repeated, successfully repeated. Okay, doing the experiment, failing to do the experiment is not called evidence of the experiment's success. That's called more evidence of the experiment's failure to be successfully accomplished. So if you just keep with this lying crap, then you're just going to get deleted. Just giving you fair warning. Because it's a bullshit pile of crap. I'm not lying by stating your evidence is insanely weak. And this, you posting this crap and telling me now you've done it, you've proven something with this completely empty bucket of evidence. Nothing. Unless I have to pay to go find his evidence. I'm not paying for it, frankly. You pay for it and then provide it to me. then you might have an argument. But as it stands, all we have is his statement that he did the experiment. This very idea of comparing an actual photograph to a synthesized piece of software on its face sounds like you can't even do the experiment that way. I mean, where's the reasoning that says the synthesized star positions are so accurate that there's not a 1.75 arc second error in those synthesized star charts? Where do you have evidence of that not being the truth? Okay. So next, useless drivel. Curved earth fanatics. Are there none? What does this have to do with anything? That's right, nothing. Okay, so back to this Robert Price. Okay, you're the ones that thought the interferometer had to do with plainly splitting light. Right, and we've now figured out that the beam splitter is intentionally complicated. It's not a beam splitter, it's a beam messer-upper. It's a beam, don't make two even beams. If you want two identical beams, you use a plain piece of glass. You want two beams that are different, you use half mirrored glass. It's that simple. Or you use prisms glued together with a glue, okay, that is essentially a diffraction gradient. So it has nothing to do with splitting light into two equal beams and then measuring how the two equal beams behave, because it has nothing to do with two equal beams. Because if you want two equal beams, a plain, simple, I shouldn't have a piece of glass here, but a plain, simple, flat piece of glass, which I don't seem to have, has the job. A piece of slide glass does the job perfectly. Why are you gluing two of these together if you don't need to? Why? I'll ask the question again. Why are they using a complex device to split the light when you can split it perfectly with a very simple device? Why would you use something complicated when you're trying to do something simple? How about answering the question? Alright. Let's see. If you block one of the paths, the fringe... So this is totally irrelevant to the point. Okay? The interferometer had to do with plainly splitting light. So the point is interferometers don't just split the light. If they wanted to just split the light, they'd use the cheap, simple, plain piece of glass. They obviously want to do something different to the light than split it. And so he evades it again. If you block one of the paths, the fringe pattern will disappear. Irrelevant to the point. And nowhere do I disagree with that. Okay? But it doesn't have anything to do with what's causing the fringe pattern, which isn't the recombination of the light. You're blocking the path, obviously, that has the pattern on it. That's a fact. So, so if it does have something to do with splitting the light, so it does have something to do with splitting the light. So again, insane statement. I didn't say a prism doesn't split light. The point is why would you glue two prisms together? So you have this layer, the layer here, the layer of glue, the other layer of the prism, and another layer. So you have 6 layers you're going through, when you could make it simple and just have 2. Why would you do that? Why would you put something dirty on the glass when now we know, as it's a fact, that any dirt on the surface of the glass will create a diffraction gradient and the light will spread? That's a fact. I proved on my porch. I proved that the pattern is created by dirt on the surface of a transparent medium. Dirt put in between 2 prisms, that's creating the pattern. Fact. Yes, essentially well established as the proximate cause. Okay, well established as the proximate cause. That's what can be stated here. Unless you have some extraordinary evidence that that's not true, I have in these videos demonstrated that it is true. I went to the website of the guy in 1980 who diagrammed the whole thing, pointed out that people 100 years ago knew about this, and that it's a real phenomenon, not a fake one. It's a real thing that happens, and it creates exactly the same pattern created by an interferometer. Exactly the same pattern, exactly the same proportions, exactly the same cycling in, cycling out, exactly the same. That's not a coincidence. That's material evidence of something. Okay. You, on the other hand, said the patterns were created at the beam splitter. I'm telling you the pattern is obviously created by dirt or any diffracting mechanism. So even the half-silvered mirror, when you have the little half-silvered pieces of mirror, the ones the light goes through, the light is bent like a little slit experiment. It's like a bunch of single slit experiments, and the light is bent. And then it reflects inside the glass. All made by internal reflection. That's right. That's what's creating the bars. That's what's creating the circles, is internal reflections inside of the glass layer. That's why the dirt layer has to be in between the glass layers. So it always has to be a very small distance from a glass surface. It's an optics experiment. It's not a quantum experiment. All right. Without mirrors, let's see. You said the patterns were created at the beam splitter with the mirrors. No, I said it's created by diffraction between the spaces between whether it's mirror silver or whether it's just dirt or whether it's water molecules. It just doesn't matter. It just has to be a medium that provides the opportunity for light to be diffracted, bent, the angles to be changed. It's hard to even think how anyone could entertain this for so long. So I prove it in the fact that it's been demonstrated by other people. They have photographs, I showed them, but I did it on my porch. I showed the exact pattern created not by two beams interfering with each other, but by one beam diffracting inside of a piece of glass. I proved it. That's why I entertain it, is because I proved it. To make matters, first I said it theoretically exists. First I made the argument to you people, well, what happens? I drew the picture. I did the obvious thing. I drew the picture and said, okay, you have this mirrored surface. What does the mirrored surface do? Well, it creates these little things that light reflects off of. You know, the little mirror pieces. It just bounces straight back, angle in, angle out. But the light that goes through, oh yeah, that's right, that's a little slit, and it's going to be diffracted by a probabilistic rules. And that once you have those high angles, the high angles will mean there'll be lots of internal reflection. The higher the angle, the more reflection. That's why the 45-degree angle bends half the light. The more angle, the more reflections. Those are facts. Okay. To make matters worse, you mistake a fucking dust pattern. So again, it's not a dust pattern, but anyway, for the actual interferometer signal. So again, there's no mistake. It's in my videos. Go look at them. I show the pattern rotating in, rotating out. I show the pattern. It's got exactly the right dimensions. The center is big. It gets a little smaller, and all the other lines are about the same size. Same exact pattern, no doubt about it. Okay, by the way, they're not the same pattern. Oh, yes, they are identical patterns. If you took a frickin', you could take an electron microscope and you're going to find any difference in the two patterns, unless the two beams are aligned perfectly. So again, another pile of crap. There's absolutely no obligation to align anything perfectly. If it was the actual signal, you would have seen bars, not rings. Again, that's not true. So I've seen a ton of interferometers, and it's the ring pattern. They have it all, they align it right in front of you. Look, we're lining up the two beams, and they have the right pattern. And the only time the pattern goes away is when they use a lens to zoom in on just the center. So they take the rest of the image out of the image, and they just zoom in on the center. But you go ahead and show me the interferometer done where it's just a bar pattern. I mean bars this way. Go ahead. Give me the link to that one. If it was the actual signal, you would have seen bars, not rings. So again, I would argue that at least 90% of the images of interferometers on YouTube actually doing it, setting them up, moving the little micrometer, doing all that crap, have the ringed pattern. And I can't even imagine, I can't think of any except the MIT guy maybe, who did use lenses where there was bars. But do you have some evidence of bars somewhere? Aligned perfectly. If it was the actual signal, you would have seen bars, not rings. So that's a contention he's making. So you people, you're going to play your little fair cop thing. You're going to tell me that if you type interferometer, light interferometer, into YouTube, that you're going to see bar patterns, not ring patterns. That's what he's asserting. And you think that's true. And you think that it makes you more credible when you say things this outrageously stupid. That I'm supposed to somehow say, boy, you're sure beating the shit out of me. You sure got me on the ropes. When I know if I type interferometer and light into YouTube, I don't think I'll find a single pattern that has bars. Okay, as usual, none of these points, though, matter to you. Well, they don't matter to me because I know they're wrong. I know you can't back that up with anything. It's complete rubbish. It's complete bullshit. So demonstrate it, show me a link to it, and then I'll show you what I just suggested, which is this simple project of typing interferometer into YouTube search and see if you can find a bar pattern instead of a ringed pattern. And I'll just show that there was nothing wrong with what I just said here. It's completely accurate what I just said. You're claiming something rather extraordinary, that all those interferometers are broken, and the only one that's doing it right is your special bar one. So again, we have all these special knowledge. There's only one page on the internet that does the two-slit math correctly, and there's apparently only one interferometer on the internet that does interferometers right. I'm not supposed to just say, you gotta be kidding. That's your argument? Yeah, I'm not convinced. I think that's a pile of shit. Alright, anyway. Jesus. Alright, none of this matters to you. Yes, I should just find that such a compelling argument. No, I don't find it compelling at all. It's only the fact that propel your confirmation. It's only the facts that propel your confirmation bias. So again, you're claiming I'm using confirmation bias when I'm pleading with you to provide evidence. I demonstrate experiments on my porch. I videotape me doing it where I didn't have any interest in finding anything. I didn't even know, when I showed the experiment, I didn't even know it was the moisture on the glass that was causing the pattern. I just said, look at the fucking pattern. It's exactly the right pattern. Where the fuck is it coming from? I said that in the video. I said, I don't know where that's coming from. And then somebody linked me, okay, to the 1980 article where the guy went into great detail explaining how this is an effect caused by any kind of dirt on the surface of the glass, and it creates all of these internal reflections that create the pattern. And what didn't you understand? And he's still, the guy, the 1980 article guy is still a quantum mechanics guy. He thinks it's quantum mechanical still. So I think he's wrong about that, of course. But that's what's happening. It's a real phenomenon. It's a real thing, not a fake thing. And I'm making the obvious point that, yeah, this is diffraction. This is the phenomenon of the two-slit experiment, just played out in a real life circumstance. All right. All right. Anyway, confirmation bias that you love spouting over and over. So again, I don't know. I have a confirmation bias and am prejudicial to all their volumes of evidence, right? And I've only pleaded for them to provide their volumes of evidence. And what do they keep linking me to? Not evidence. I was linked to the 1970 Eddington experiment. I had to read through the entire paper until I finally found oh yeah, we have a 15% margin of error. 15%! Yeah, their calculation, the precision of their calculation, the margin of error was twice the precision of their calculation. Oh yeah, that's brilliant. All right, anyway, a plain piece of glass has non-uniformalities, and it might not split the light evenly. So he's saying that a piece of slide glass that is used for microscopic observations is somehow has more defects in it than this piece of a prism glass. And he knows that somehow. He has some super knowledge of this fact. And that somehow those imperfections would have something to do with the pattern, which they don't, because quite obviously, as I demonstrated on my porch, if I clean the glass, the pattern goes away. If I blow on it, the pattern's back. That's simple. Okay, put moisture on the glass, pattern. Take the moisture off the glass, no pattern. Jesus, you're just so obstinate. All right. Then he quotes me. The point is whether time has a zero or whether time has a maximum. I didn't say it that way. I said the point is whether time has a zero and a maximum. They can't even eat more space. So he cut quote mind and tied two sentences together. They can't even eat more space. I don't even know. I talked about the fact that light, photons, essentially eat space. That they consume a certain amount of distance in space per second. And that's what they do. And they do it no matter where you put them. That's what they always do, is they eat a certain amount of space in a certain amount of time. So I don't know how you can pervert that, but you're trying, no doubt. Again, more gibberish nonsense. So, yes, well, clearly how you've misquoted me, it's gibberish nonsense. I think the point I made in the video was kind of simple. They don't believe that there's an absolute frame, that there's something that's actually in the universe somewhere that may not have any velocity in any direction. It is not going this way, it's not going that way, it's not going any way whatsoever. They think that's impossible. And that they think, because they can make these frames, that they can also exceed the maximum speed also. Because they can play some kind of frame game that says something that's going 500 miles an hour is inside of a spaceship going 1,000 miles an hour, which is inside of another spaceship going 10,000 miles an hour. See, they can make something go incredibly fast because they just put it in bigger and bigger frames. Faster and faster frames. So in their opinion, the whole universe could be moving the speed of light going this way, and the things in it could be going the speed of light that way. And that would make sense to them. Where in my universe, that doesn't happen. That's bullshit. The things have to go. Light has to travel the speed of light. It can't travel anything else. It's not just that it wants to or it's desirable. It doesn't have a choice. It can't ever go faster than the speed of light, no matter what kind of perverse bus it's on. It doesn't matter how many buses you put on. Buses on, moving bridges. The bridge is spinning this way, and the bus is going this way, and the whole planet's spinning this way, and the sun's spinning this way. It doesn't matter how many ways you move it. It still can't go faster than the speed of light. It can't eat more space. And it certainly doesn't do some diagonal thing where it travels the diagonal line, okay, in less time than it can travel the straight line. Bullshitters. Yeah, so that's gibberish and nonsense. I think I've made the point fairly clearly, and you're just evading it. You can't describe anything you're arguing against for the life of you. Another pointless statement. Okay, rubbish, useless. I've made the argument, and you've said nothing to it. You say there's no difference between these philosophical positions. I say they are completely different philosophical positions. I believe there is absolute zero velocity, and there is a maximum velocity of the speed of light, and there's nothing else. There's just in between that. And only matter can move something in between that. All the forces move the speed of light all the time, period. That's not what you believe. All right. Let's see. So what makes you think you invented, you are invited to reply when all you have to say is pure gibberish. So he thinks this is a gibberish argument, that I'm somehow not getting to the point when I'm trying to get to the point. I mean, this is what relativity says. Relativity says, fuck the idea of an absolute frame. It doesn't exist. We're all in just some relative position, and we can all relatively just say that's going the speed of light, regardless of the fact that the whole thing is moving up and down at the same time. It can't do that. It can't go the speed of light this way and go some other speed this way. You think it can, I think it's impossible. It's not gibberish. All right. Nothing you said remotely relevant to what I said, says you. You didn't quote what you said. No wonder you keep calling everyone religious kooks. You're behaving like them. You're insane fanatics who wish to force everyone to believe what you believe, and you have no evidence defending your beliefs. You just know it's right. I know there's a God. You somehow know it in your heart that space is bent and that it makes virtual photons, and that's the way it works. That's reality. If I had the same messed up conception, I'd be as, I don't know what that is, angstier as you are. So you're conceding that I'm doing exactly what you would do in my position, and then you're saying I'm wrong to do that. Does that make any sense on your part, to give instructions to somebody who you're basically saying, no, you're doing it exactly the way I would do it if I was in your position? You're, again, as we always disagree, you're behaving exactly with no excuses. You seem to be a reasonable person, and you seem to have absolutely no desire to do anything but confirm your bias. You seem obsessed, like it's your mommy or it's your baby, that somehow you're so invested in this stupid fucking relativity bullshit and bending space and time as answers to questions that you just can't accept that it might be full of shit. You can't accept that first your evidence is incredibly weak, which is unfortunate. I'm not saying it proves you wrong. I'm just saying you won't even admit that simple truth. And you keep contriving all this crap to keep arguing that we're sure we're right, we're sure we're right. All right, so he quotes me again. Any explanation that behind this will inevitably be an explanation of changes in length and time, says you. Okay, so that's a quote of him, and I say, says you. Exactly. Honestly, I thought it was a, whatever, tautology, but okay. I was literally trying to say, if you explain time dilation, you explain time dilation. I guess you have to be contrarian to even the most, that word again, statements. I hate that tautology word. It sounds incredibly like you're almost a transvestite if you say that correctly. It's a really gay word. But anyway, tautology. All right. So you're saying that the argument is that the comment posted was clearly stating, here's proof of time dilation. That proves relativity. That was clearly the comment I was responding to. And I made the counter argument that no, you can come up with other mechanisms that cause something you're calling time dilation, which I would call time retardation, or metabolism retardation, or some other better terminology. So that's all we're really arguing about sometimes here, is that you want to call it time dilation, and to a lot of people that means that time is bent, when time dilation means clock retardation. So I'm just saying, if you've explained clock retardation, you explain clock retardation might be okay, but again, that wasn't the point being made. The point being made is, what does clock retardation prove? Does it prove relativity? Absolutely. And prove nothing else? Can no other theory use the existence of time retardation or metabolism retardation as an argument defending their theory? And my point is that it's just as usable for me to prove my theory as it is for you to prove your theory. It proves mine just as well as it proves yours. First of all, you aren't changing length. Okay, well, I was reacting to the length change being argued, that when something has velocity, its length changes. So, I wasn't as articulate as I should have been on that point. It was already presented why length contraction, well, see, you're using length contraction, so I was correct to react to it, is a real phenomenon. So it hasn't been proven. So again, he says it's already presented. Where is this? Where's your proof? But you don't grasp any of the math. Oh, okay, it's a mathematical proof. Oh, okay, it's not a real proof. It's not evidence proof. It's just your mathematical, theoretical projection of a truth. And I'm supposed to, again, be impressed by your garbage math. For why the MM experiment... So we're back to Michelson-Morley again. Oh, fuck. I'm dismissing it as rubbish because I'm pointing out how it was, from the very beginning, a complete canard. When you know what's really happening is that every one of those mirrors they used, if there was any glass in front of them, any dirt on those could have created effects that would ruin the experiment. The fact that they had to really search, for the signal quiet times. Anyway, well, I'm not going to go into it. We've been over it and over it. But yeah, I would argue it's a rubbish experiment on rubbish theory. I'm giving you a simplification. You have no mechanism. Alright, so again, he's quote mining me. So he's got two pieces of crap. I'm giving you a simplification. You have no mechanism. So yes, I'm arguing, that was when I was arguing about the fact that you don't have a mechanism that creates gravity, nothing rational. Just complete magical force thingy. You won't even call it a force. You have this magical mechanism that extracts in 3 dimensions space from the universe, and somehow the physical matter knows that space has been removed, that empty space disappeared, and that it must fall into the new empty space, the double empty space. You won't admit that your mechanism has to have tension, that somehow you have to be removing an ether or some kind of real thing that's tied to the material thing in some way, because the material thing can't feel the absence of a vacuum. You can't have it surrounded by empty space, like the Earth is, surrounded by empty space, and it's your argument that somehow the Earth feels the space being removed. And it feels like it has to move. It goes by some pulling mechanism that you don't describe, that you don't account for in any way whatsoever. It's just a magical thing that makes an energetic event happen, Earth moving, very energetic. To make the Earth move the way it's moving, you'd have to hit it with really big asteroids to keep it in orbit. Really big pieces of energy. Well, coming from the other side, of course. And you don't account for any of it. So he's quote mining me in this perverse way where it doesn't describe that. That's what I'm saying with those two statements. You take one of the most dramatic energetic events in the universe, moving entire galaxies and suns around, and you don't account for where the energy comes from at all. It's amazing and hypocritical that you never, ever launch that complaint against Newton. Why would I launch it against Newton? Newton didn't claim space was bent. Newton didn't say time and space is a thing, space-time. He made no claims. He was looking for one. He liked particle gravity, by the way. Okay, for 10 years, he thought it was a pretty good contender as an answer. All right? But he made no claims. So why should I point a finger at Newton? Newton did anything wrong. He said, all I can see is the inverse square law. All right? I've explained to you what it does. I don't explain to you why it does it. I mean, there's a famous sentence where he says something like that. You must have heard it before. So why would I have any criticism for Newton? He wasn't making wrong guesses. I'm saying Einstein's guess is silly and wrong. Shit. And his invention of the instantaneous force. Well, again, he didn't invent an instantaneous force. He didn't claim it was an instantaneous force. He basically said there's probably got to be some mechanism, right? He's also famous for saying, well, if anybody thinks Earth and Saturn and all this shit is flying around for free, they're fooling themselves because there's got to be something doing it. So just lie some more. The fact that Newton didn't, I mean, the guy lives 300 years ago, and I'm going to pick on him because he didn't know the exact speed of light, or any speed to light. He was fooled by its very fastness. It looks very fast when you just look at it. Yeah, it looks like it's going really fast, like it might be instantaneous. And he was supposed to know that. And let's also understand it's a tiny detail, right? It changes almost nothing. It's such an insignificant effect, the speed of light, on gravitational predictions. Tiny, tiny, tiny bit of error it introduced when you don't recognize it as being slower than instantaneous. Tiny. Amazing. This is amazing. To call me some kind of hypocrite because I'm not ragging on Newton for guessing wrong, for speculating and saying the angels did it. He believed in angels. He could have said, angels make it happen. Okay? And then I'd ridicule him for being a fucking religious kook. But he didn't do that. Okay. When Newton says he has no explanation, oh, there, he admits that Newton has no explanation for why the force is the way it is, you compliment him. Yes, I compliment him for being a good scientist, for not way overstepping his evidence, way overstepping his knowledge. He clearly didn't know the answer, and he said plainly, I don't got a good answer. And Einstein's answer is just as bullshit as it could be. I mean, it's on its face almost silly. And the fact that you people just gobble that crap up, it's just evidence that you want a godlike answer. You don't want a rational answer. You want some kind of synthetic, completely arbitrary pile of shit as an answer. When others say the same thing for other theories, you chastise them. Well, again, where are they saying anything like Newton? You show me the scientist. Give me one example of one scientist I've ever chastised who showed the scientific discipline of Newton. Newton believed in a lot of wacky shit, and he didn't pour it all over his science. And neither did Maxwell. I mean, Maxwell believed lots of crazy, stupid shit too, and he didn't sprinkle that over his science either. So how come all the scientists have to do that now? They just make up some crap. Hey, that's weird about them stars moving funny. Why don't we just blame it on like dark matter or something? Why don't we just invent some new dimensions or something? Alright, what a blatant, obvious hypocrisy. So I guess I just can't imagine how you can be this perverse in how you're thinking. To think I have some obligation to ridicule Newton for not making shitty guesses. And disguising shitty guesses as absolute facts. Like Einstein did. You know, this whole idea that he thought the Eddington experiment was good evidence, when clearly it wasn't. You do realize that no matter what theory you have, it's going to have base axioms and base components that are the starting point for the theory. Right, I'm doing something very different than Newton was trying to do. Newton was describing what could be perceived with, he was describing evidence. I'm describing function, and there isn't necessarily going to be a photograph of that. You have to dissect it from the evidence. And it's not, Newton was describing what was apparent versus what could be deduced from the collection of evidence. All right, this is coming from the same person who throws a hissy fit anytime someone asks why the ton. So again, I so desperately have tried to get you to change your rhetoric, but you just want to use this in a dirty way. You want to turn everything, you're like little Beavis and Butthead losers. You can't deal with any subject in any kind of serious manner, and all you can use is ridicule. So I should say Einstein, dumb old Einstein said, right? And I win because I make fun of somebody's name. I mean, you're just such childish, petty little weasels. You can't make an argument. So I've pointed out how they're particles of force. So you want, if we have to do that, right? We have to do it because you can't be an adult. So you can't deal with the word photon and the idea that ton is really the substance of the photon, that it's made of something. So yeah, we can't use that word. So I use bits, and I make it as simple as possible. 2 kinds of matter bits, 2 kinds of force bits. So you can't do that now. So you know, where do I get to insist that you're not able to just keep playing games with names? What's your real name so I can just make fun of your fucking name? Are you bald so I can make fun of that? You petty shit. You think you're going to convince somebody by doing this kind of crap? Petty, cheap mockery of a word, 4-letter word. Oh, all right. Let's see. If anyone asks you why the tons deflect at 90-degree angles, I don't. There's no hissy fit. I'm saying the physical rules of the universe are going to be simple, but they're never going to be non-existent. There's never going to be an explanation where you can go all the way down and say this is why it moves the speed of light, or this is why the black checkers only can move on the black spaces and the red checkers can only move on the red spaces. You're never going to get more resolution than that. And if you're expecting more resolution than that, it's an insane expectation. And the hypocrisy is yours. Ridiculous amounts of fucking hypocrisy. Because you don't apply any of those standards to your own wacky theories. If I ask you to answer, where does the energy come from? Tons and tons of energy. Giant masses are moving. And you don't account for 1 single calorie of the energy that would be required to make that happen in the real universe. Not 1 bit of it do you account for. And you call my requiring you to explain something of where did the virtual photons come from? You don't have to explain. So why shouldn't I find it obnoxious when you have to explain nothing? And you want me to give you details that go below these 4 simple little rules of the game. This is the checkerboard. This is the rules of the checkers. I've cut it all the way down to checkers. It's not even chess. It's just checkers. And you're saying too many rules. Too many arbitrary rules. I mean, you're such a fucking hypocrite. You are such a gobshit hypocrite. He says that. No, you're ridiculous. He says it's ridiculous. No, you're ridiculous. The bullshit you get away with. The fucking ambiguous, again, the whole bullshit about dark matter. Not 1 shred of evidence for the existence of this rubbish, except it comes to save the day for your broken mathematics. And you get away with it. Amazing bullshit. Alright, but here's the thing. Your theory doesn't even have force. So amazing. So you don't think photons exist. They're one of the forces, dumbass. The electromagnetic spectrum doesn't exist. Right? Okay, wait a minute. Let's read on. That's right. I suggest you pay attention to the point carefully. What point? Alright, here we go. There's not going to be one, right? Your theory doesn't even have force. Amazing. I mean, it's just amazing. I say everything traveling the speed of light is a force. Okay, that includes the bent space. The virtual photons for magnetism. Alright, an electron and a proton are supposed to attract each other. Well, they don't attract each other. they're pushed into each other. But anyway, by your theory, they attract each other because they shield each other from outside tons by deflecting them by 90 degrees. Yes. The black ones go through the red ones and escape perpendicularly. The red ones go through the black ones and escape perpendicularly. Black ones reflect off of black, red reflect off of red. So the proton force reflects off of protons, the electron force reflects off of electrons. The electron force is what the electromagnetic spectrum is made out of. The proton force has no spectrum. Okay, so a stream of tons going towards a proton is blocked by an electron. So again, it's not blocked. Didn't we just point out how it's not blocked? So there's a bunch of black heads for an electron. They hit the electron and reflect, which essentially means the electron moves forward. So if they're black, the electron moves forward. If they're red, they come out perpendicularly through the electron and they never hit the proton. So the proton doesn't get hit by those reds and it moves towards the black. Anyway, I probably should draw this part, but we'll see how it goes. An electron and a proton, well, I don't really have the camera set up, are supposed to attract each other. Okay, so 90 degrees. Okay, so a stream of tons going towards a proton is blocked by an electron. Okay, so just understand, a stream of tons, it just means both colors it could be then. So if they're both colors, the black ones will hit the electron and move it forward. The red ones will leave perpendicularly. But the tons coming from the sides will be deflected at 90 degrees to fill in the shadow. By percentage, yes, that's exactly why it would be even, unless you have an extra force from some direction. That's why nothing happens until you have an extra amount coming from some direction. So if you have an equal amount coming from each way, then yes, the forces will all remain equal because there's nothing that has less in one direction. So yes, that's perfectly consistent with what I'm saying. That's why an electron can never get too close to a proton, is because some force will always come in from the other perpendicular angles and create some minimum amount of pressure between the two. Okay, so a stream of tons going towards a proton is blocked by an electron, but the tons coming from the sides will be deflected 90 degrees to fill in the shadow. Yes, half of them will go the wrong way, but keep in mind that in your 2D diagram there are two streams coming from the sides and one coming from above and one below, so the shadow will be filled in completely. Well, that won't happen because the angles at which the perpendicular angles can obviously be in two of the three dimensions, so they can leave in two of the three dimensions. So there's a 1 in 4 chance that it's going to go out the dimension, okay, that would matter. And so it's obviously more complex than you're saying. And again, there's no way to get around the fact that there's an amount of even pressure, and the only thing that really matters is where the unevenness is. So it doesn't really matter about the fact that there are interactions between the two. The net unevenness is going to be the pressure. So all you need is the net unevenness, and you can't fix the net unevenness. The net imbalance exists, and it won't be filled by any extra energy. You have to have more come in to fill the missing bits. So you're just perverting a simple diagram. Alright, let's see. This means that your theory doesn't even allow for basic forces to even exist. So again, this is absolute bullshit. I've drawn it. It's on the website. The bullshit he's saying doesn't happen. It's just nonsense. There's no extra energy coming from the sides that eliminate all that happens going forward or backward. It doesn't even out the force in any way whatsoever. It's just a pile of shit. And this is the SAN. What is this? S-A-N-S. What is that? People keep typing that. What do they really mean? And this is ANS? I don't know what is you supposed to be typing? What does sans mean? The fact that your theory doesn't even allow motion because drag will come into play. So again, I've been over the drag argument and how it's obviously a mechanism where force is captured by an object. I've drawn pictures of possible explanations for how that takes place. So again, this is just bullshit. Do you have a dispute that there's a relationship between time and velocity, gravitation, or not? Do you have a dispute that there's a relationship between time and velocity, gravitation, or not? Again, it doesn't have anything to do with gravity in the sense that it's only the motion part of gravity. So the fact is, if something can't be moved, like an electron, you can't give an electron velocity through gravitation. So you can't move it faster than 10 meters per second per second. My argument is that there's absolutely no relationship between time and a function. Movement is a function. The two are separate functions. I was just trying to get to the point that you keep wanting to make time into something like something else. And time isn't like anything else. It's not a dimension. It's not up, it's not down, it's not left, it's not right, it's not forward, it's not back. It can't be tied to distance as a thing. It isn't distance. It isn't a thing. It isn't a dimensional thing. Okay? It's a function, a separate kind of thing. But clearly, you can't travel distance without engaging the function of time. Okay, you outright contradicted yourself here to previous videos. Well, that's just bullshit. It looks like Russ Rag was right to post the link to the clock experiment. So again, he's now arguing that there was something right in the argument that the fact that the radioactive decay is changed by velocity proves relativity right. Where just earlier he was trying to make the concession argument that yes, that might have been overstepping. But not anymore. He's back to just being another asshole, making a claim you can't defend with anything called reasoning. Alright, you used to keep saying time dilation doesn't have to do with dimensions. It has to do with relationships. And now that I explained to you that that's exactly what others are saying as well. Again, his comment couldn't have been clearer. He says it's proof of special relativity, for fuck's sake. He says it's proof. How do you explain this as not being proof is essentially what he was saying. How does this not prove it? Was his point. And I explained how it doesn't prove it. Shit. I mean, you're just an amazing hypocrite. Let's see. As well, you have to be a contrarian to that point as well. Again, there's no... I'm not being a contrarian to point out that the fact that you think there's a relationship between velocity and some sort of effect on clocks doesn't mean that you're acknowledging that the effect is a physical effect on the physical function of the clock, because you still think it has something to do with something called perception. You still think there's some ability to perceive wrong because of some bending or warping of some time function. Not that time isn't being measured correctly, that there is nothing broken, just bad measurements. You're not conceding that, yes, they're all bad measurements. Incorrect measuring. You think there's something correct in the measurements. Alright, saying as well, and you have to be contrarian to the point. Again, you can't say that others are claiming if you don't understand the concepts and what they're referring to. Well, we already know what they're referring to. I've pointed it out. That we can go diagonal lines in the same amount of time. We can go straight lines. We've seen it already, what they're saying. And what they're saying is bullshit. They can't say light travels a constant speed and then say it's okay to travel diagonal lines into the future that are longer distances, but you can do it in exactly the same amount of time without going faster than the speed of light. That's not possible. All right. Let's see. Refer to. It's good shit talking, but not much if you're trying to make an argument or claim that you're some sort of thinker. I can't believe I actually got you to say something that implies you deny the Keating experiment. So again, the Keating experiment is what? That's the airplane experiment? And where did I deny it in any way whatsoever? Oh, that's right, I didn't deny it at all. So what the fuck are you talking about? You're not a careful man at all. No, you're the slob, and you demonstrate it, because I think in this own post you said shit you shouldn't have said. If you're going to keep changing your wording just to be contrarian, then I'm going to take your words at face value. Well, we've already seen what you do to my words. You tie two four-letter quotes together from different sentences and then say, there, I've done good service to your theory. Fuck you. Alright, right, so it's psychotic to try to imagine their physics theory. It's supposed to be physics. It's a physical theory. I didn't say that. I said, where's the physics in your theory? There's no physics. There's no physical. It's just a bunch of fucking God of the Gaps, invisible man bullshit. It's supposed to describe relationships between physical measurements. Again, this is what they think physics is. Physical, theoretical measurements. None in the actual world. Just theoretical measurements. What's so bad with that? Because you make up your ruler and you make up the measurements. You don't actually do anything in the real world. You just synthesize a fake world and make fake measurements in it. And like I said, it does a better job of describing things than your theory of a number of reasons. Not very well written, but whatever. Says you. Again, just in my opinion, that's insanely stupid in the fact that it's already conceded by many that you have two completely incompatible fundamental theories, quantum mechanics and bent space, and the two will get into trouble, and one of them's going to have to be shot. At least one of them. Your theory violates the observed equivalence principle. It doesn't do any such thing, just a flat-out lie, which has been tested to a small margin of error. So again, it doesn't do any such thing, just bullshit. I don't know why this is triggering you so much. Maybe if you read my post with comprehension, you would have known that. Well, again, I've read your post exactly. Any honest man can see whether you've backed any of this shit up with a goddamn fucking thing. So again, he says, I violated some observed equivalency principle. Where did that happen? I'm going to win the day because I'm fucking right. I'll show you why magnets work. I'll give you the first physical, I gave you the first physical explanation of magnetism, the first rational explanation. The thing is just a filter. Okay, so he's going to find something wrong with that statement. As I said, the shadows will be filled in by the tons coming from the side. So again, I've drawn it. I'll do a specific drawing to this exact point, okay, in a future video. But there's absolutely no capacity for the side to provide more energy. It can only do this and this way, okay? And so anything it produces is only going to be half going this, 1/4 this way, 1/4 this way, 1/4 that way, 1/4 that way, at best. So it'd be, at best, 1/4 of the force change. So it can't possibly fill in. And the point would be is that both sides are doing that. So the same thing's coming out the other sides by the same proportions. So those things are, the non-changing forces are never imbalanced. The only forces that matter are the ones that are changed, where there's more here or more coming from some other place or less. But those are the only ones that can change anything. And the very point you're making is the very explanation I've given for why. Go look at the videos where I explain why electrons can't hold velocity. They can't hold velocity for that very reason. Okay, that eventually the energy coming in from the sides will dilute any imbalances that exist. because a higher percentage of the stuff going this way, if there's more arrows going this way than this way, the stuff coming from the sides will hit the ones that are going this way more often and convert them into arrows going this way or this way, and therefore, by just laws of probability, reduce it back to 50-50. But it'll be reduced to 50-50. It won't be reduced to 0, and it won't be accelerated to 200. It can't change an imbalance. An imbalance that has that's a durable imbalance, one that's a lasting imbalance. Okay, as said, the shadows we filled in, so that's just bullshit. Also, for repulsion, the repulsion is not dictated by how many tons are between the two magnets. Well, that's exactly the argument. So you say it isn't. Clearly, the argument is, if the black ones can never go through a black one, then it has to increase the pressure because there's more bounces between them. So, I mean, that argument is indestructible, retard. It's dictated by the difference in pressure between the outside region and the region between the two magnets. No, it's dictated by the number of impacts. So again, this bullshit argument, if I have one ping pong ball bouncing between these two fingers, and I'm going to measure the force of that ball by hits per second, obviously there's going to be twice as many hits per second here. Well, actually 4 times as many hits per second here. 4 times as many. And then every time I have the distance, 8 times as many. The force increases. So even though there's no more extra ping pong balls, the force increases with the distance change. So fuck you, you're wrong, you stupid fuck. Alright, it's the difference between the outside region and the region between the two magnets. No, it's completely dictated by the distance, and that's why there's an inverse square law. This means that if you just move your magnet sideways, you reset the pressure difference and you wouldn't have any repulsion. Whoops. So it's complete nonsense. The repulsion is the force is constantly going through the magnets. You can't stop the gravity force ever. It's constantly going through the magnet filter. So no matter what position the magnet filter is in, the force is going through it. The magnet is constantly creating magnetism. It never turns off. It's just bullshit for you to say something like that. The only way you can turn it off is if you have an electromagnet. And then you can change the polarity and do anything you want because you're reversing the filter. It's a filter. That's it's the quote in the word. The thing is just a filter. You quoted me saying the word filter. Do you understand what filter means? The force isn't coming out of the magnet. The force is going through the magnet, retard. Oh, okay. How anyone could overlook such obvious oversight. So there's no oversight, just a pile of shit. Not even close to an oversight. I mean, look, you're going to make these pronouncements, and you can't draw pictures, you can't do a motherfucking thing to illustrate your brilliant point. But the point is, I can't even imagine how your point could be salient to this point at all. There's just no way. Moving the magnet, all you can do is you can't turn off a magnet. You can either reverse the poles or not reverse them. But there's no other, you can't undo the magnetism by, I shifted it, therefore the magnets aren't magnets anymore. It's no such thing, idiot. Alright, I mean the very reason you can pull magnets apart often very easily by sliding them is this very reason. Yes, you slide them from not repelling each other, attracting, and they'll fall right apart. And the same is true for the opposite. So you've demonstrated nothing. You're just so full of shit. It literally fails to create the most basic forces. So again, there's just no evidence that there's any failure. The diagrams are on the website. Fuck you, you're full of shit. You accuse others of being in love with their theories. Again, I have no stake in this. Oh, complete bullshit. I'm only motivated by the fact. What facts? Your weak facts. The most weak facts in the universe you're motivated by. I'm compelled by the weakest evidence you can find, and you'll defend it. Okay. the fact that you're a lying piece of scum who misrepresents and lies about others. So again, where did I lie about others? Just more accusations you have no evidence for. So can't ever present his own knowledge accurately, whatever that even means. You clearly don't have any knowledge, especially of my theory. All right, when you can't even deal with the most basic criticisms. Again, you're not making a basic criticism. You're making accusations substantiated with absolutely nothing. Not even a drawing of what you claim is a misrepresentation or some detail I haven't provided an explanation for. Nothing. This isn't mentioning that you haven't provided any detailed calculations. I've already pointed out that what detailed calculation do you want? You want me to draw you a picture of the inverse square law? 1 over r squared. There. You happy? And instead provide hand-wavy heuristics that you expect anyone to go with, and still, even then, this isn't mentioning the more nutty parts. Yeah, right, I'm the nut, but you're the ones who don't put the slit width in the two-slit math. And I'm the nutty one. Yeah. Like the idea that electrons are magnetic monopoles. Yes, a clearly obvious fact. Oh, a violation of the Lorentz force, a completely made-up thing. Where's a Lorentz force? Why don't you show me a Lorentz force? Show me one of those, please. Violation of the energy-momentum relationship. Again, how so? How fucking so? Explain it to me. Show me. Show me how, if electrons and protons are the magnetic monopoles, how there's any behavior that they are known to participate in that in any way violates any law of real physics. Let's see, violation of the non-aberration of gravity. So that's merely an inverse square law simplicity. Obviously, protons and electrons aren't doing the inverse square law thing. There isn't photons going through them and coming out all different directions and doing all kinds of wacky shit like that. The forces between them are usually just rays of force, little tiny bits of force. They're not functioning in a field of, let's see what you would call it. Any imbalances that exist in their relationships with other things are very personal, and the force is just between them. It isn't being spread in any inverse square law way. The force they're producing. The force they're interacting with. I don't know how exactly to say how, if two electrons have stuff caught between them, the stuff caught between them doesn't spread into the entire universe. It's just stuck between them. So there is no inverse square law regarding that force. Okay. Let's see, the only motivated by the fact that you're a lying piece of scum. Okay, when you can't deal with the most basic criticism mentioned, where were we? Like the idea that electrons are magnetic monopoles. Electrons and protons are the monopoles, yes. Violation of the energy-momentum relationship, whatever that is. Violation of the non-aberration of gravity, another bullshit piece of nothing. Violation of Newton's first law of inertia. Again, how so? So there's no explanation how it violates any of those things whatsoever. Some of these ideas are nice, but you outright fail at actually accounting for real-world observations. Like no detail of what real-world observation I didn't account for. Which one? Your made-up ones, right? Your pretend gravitational lensing, your pretend entangled particles, the stuff that you haven't proven with anything called really good evidence. It's really rubbish evidence, and you just keep claiming that those facts I have to incorporate into my theory because you say they're facts. And no, my theory doesn't have to account for your non-realities, your made-up fantasy things, your wavetons, to play with word games, your wavetons I don't have to account for in every possible way imaginable. The places where you seem right is ambiguous, whatever that means. The few places where your theory is not ambiguous. I guess there's nothing ambiguous. There's 4 rules overtly stated about how things interact. You know, no ambiguity at all. I mean, I'm declaring protons and electrons the magnetic monopoles. Where's the ambiguity in that statement? I'm saying it's an absolute fact that they're the cause of magnetism in magnets. They do it. They're the monopoles. Gee, that's ambiguous. Every prediction you made is flat out wrong. Well, you haven't proven any of that. Beam splitters don't create rings. So here we go again. I mean, you can't, I don't think you can, with any kind of credulity, argue this point. I'm just saying you can't argue the point that I have demonstrated that the fundamental pattern is created by a circumstance that seems intrinsic to the function of the beam splitter. I mean, it's integral to it. And I've pointed out how using these complex beam splitters was totally unnecessary. You could use a plain piece of glass. If all you want is 2 separate equal strength beams of light, then you should be using the simplest method to create that, not the most complex method. And you're the one who has no answer to that circumstance. Absolute truth. I've yet to see a single prediction that you got right. So again, I pointed out that my theory doesn't predict. Let's see how to say this one. That clearly I've pointed out that how in your slit experiments in light, the pattern isn't what it's supposed to be mathematically, which is a beautiful gradation. And it doesn't turn out that way. And I think I've demonstrated that's the truth. Okay, that it isn't the pattern you claim it to be. It doesn't look like the electron pattern. And I've pointed out why the electron pattern will be completely different is because electrons are bouncing off the force of the other electrons. The electrons never hit each other. The photons hit the electrons. The electrons don't hit electrons. Electrons bounce off each other. And that's why the electron pattern is the correct pattern and the photon pattern isn't. Is because the photon pattern, the angle is sharper and there's no blending. There's no fudging of that angle. It's always the same angle. It doesn't have any latitude to be a little closer, a little closer, a little closer. It either hits an electron or it misses the electron. It doesn't do anything in between. Right, ambiguous, or it's flat out wrong. I've yet to see a single prediction that you've gotten right. So again, yeah, well, some of the predictions I can't obviously prove I'm right, but I'll state to you that the prediction that the interferometer pattern is created by the diffraction gradient in the beam splitter, I think that one's going to be proven right soon. Every prediction you made is flat out wrong. Beam splitters don't create rings, despite your confirmation bias of mistaking the thing for a signal. So, the thing for a signal. I mean, just an amazingly bizarre statement. Despite your confirmation bias for mistaking the thing for the signal. The thing. What is the thing? The signal is the pattern. What mistake did I make? I created the pattern without ever combining 2 beams of light. No opportunity for interference. And yet I created the pattern. They split the light evenly. Okay, so he's contending that it isn't true what I've explained over and over again, that the fundamental element of their beam splitter is the fact that they are putting an obstacle in front of the light, and that obstacle is made of little blocks, and the blocks will reflect the light clean, so any angle you come in you'll go out on when you reflect, and when you don't reflect, when you go through, you might end up at any of a variety of extreme angles. So when you reflect, it's angle in, angle out. When you go through, it's who knows where you end up. And that's a fact. And he's denying that fact. Alright, that's why people use them. So again, he's saying people use the more complex device because the more complex device has less chance of screwing it up. So even though the plain piece of glass gives you the most reliable 50-50 beam splitter you could possibly get, two equal beams, they are deliberately using the more complex method because somehow it's better to have more junk between the light beams. The more complex you make it, the less likely you're going to interfere with the light in some way. So having 6 surfaces is a lot better than having just 2. A lot less chance of something going wrong. Yeah, bullshit. A lot more chance of something fucking it up. Okay, so it's nothing about splitting a beam of light. It's about diffracting a beam of light, period. And shooting a beam through a single slit that doesn't touch the edges doesn't create copies of the beam. So again, the beam is obviously copied by the internal reflections that I've pointed out so many times. Internal reflections inside the layer. That's why the dirt layer has to be right on the surface of the glass, is because it has to create the internal reflections inside the piece of glass. Dumbass. Okay, beam through the single slit, it doesn't touch the edges and doesn't create copies of that beam, despite your prediction. Well, again, it's clear that's what does happen. The article makes it clear. The research that's been done makes it clear. It happens that way. That's what light does. It's a real optical phenomenon. You're claiming that your experiment doesn't include that real optical phenomenon, and that's just being irrational. But somehow you feel obligated to say your theory is rational. Well, I'm saying, yes, it's the only fair way to look at the evidence. You have to completely have you have to be just a compulsive liar, lunatic, to deny the evidence. It's overwhelming. Internal reflection is a real thing. Diffraction is a real thing, and they're happening in beam splitters that have layers. The more layers in your beam splitter, the more likely that's what you're creating. Is an optical phenomenon. Just like a ferrocell. Why don't you explain ferrocells, since you're so curious and intuitive about everything? Why don't you explain how that functions? Because newsflash, it's going to be the same kind of explanation. Again, you're the one being a lying, deceptive cunt, and that's why you deserve the response you're getting. Well, whatever. Well, time will tell about who deserved what, you fucking piece of raggy shit. And if I'm still alive, yeah, I'm going to take advantage of it, shithead. Because you're a piece of crap, and everybody you should be pilloried in the fucking public square as the little rat weasel you are. Keep eating shit and continue to be living in shit. Yeah, well, at least I'm living in the truth. I'm not a religious liar like you. A liar for a fake, silly god of bent space. Okay, oh, that proves a lot. You should just play old Einstein quote saying you will never create a nuclear bomb. Oh no, I should just play. So that's just your tactic, right? You just make fun, buffoon, mock. And so I win in the Einstein argument because I could just play Einstein saying nuclear bomb will never work. Anyway. Right, if he admitted he was wrong about that, then there's no problem. Well, of course he had to admit he was wrong. It was just, because shit, yeah, the guy did it, so he obviously knew it was wrong. But it might be the reason why he really wasn't part of the Manhattan Project is because, obviously he looked a bit stupid. Okay, you on the other hand say that double down on the same garbage you spewed. Again, what garbage was that I spewed, idiot? You're the one spewing garbage, okay, providing non-existent evidence of all these violations that never took place. Okay, inside the frame the light goes this way, outside the frame it goes this way. Yeah, so that's why I was pointing out how they create frames where the velocity means the light bends. But to be consistent with the rest of the real world, when that light bends, when it comes out back into the real world, somehow it's not going to be coming out at the bent angle. It's going to come back out at the regular angle again. Because otherwise the outside observer wouldn't be able to see it at all. Okay, thank you for confirming that you still don't understand the most basic parts of the things you're arguing against. Your conception of what others are saying is so laughably cartoonish. Again, we've been over it and over it, but anyway, whatever, same to you. You actually make sense while you're acting the way you are. Actually, the fact that you still actually think an internal frame is like an actual picture frame is beyond lunacy. Well, I'm just saying you're making it behave that way. You're giving light properties. It no longer has the property of perpendicular. You're saying that doesn't exist anymore in your magical frame. Well, the problem with that is if you actually do integrate your fake frame into the reality, the light can't go this way, or it's going to be obvious to the external world that it has this velocity problem. So if it doesn't come out the right way to the outside world, it's going to be quite obvious which thing is moving. But anyway, whatever. The relativity arguments. It's a waste of time. So now it's where they are arguing that the photons go this way into the future. So, okay, more relativity. No, that's not what the particular video was about. You can't even describe your own videos accurately. This was just someone trying to explain basic math. That's how light goes forward and back takes a longer time when the arm is moving, according to basic classical mechanics. Well, again, there's nothing basically mechanical about turning perpendicular into this. That's not any kind of basic mechanical thing. That's what baseballs do on buses. It's not what photons do, especially when you claim the photons aren't affected by the emitter. Clearly, you're making the photon be affected by the emitter, completely owned by it, shot into the future instead of perpendicular. Oh, God. Okay, I actually implied at some point that DraftScience thinks you'll never create an atomic bomb. I don't think it did that. This was unintentional, but I can't edit the comment now. Okay, well, I didn't see that, so. But whatever, obviously I didn't do that. This video's just gone on and on, so I didn't realize this comment was so fucking long. Well, we'll just kill this asshole while we're here. Let's see. So Paul Worth, who provides no evidence of anything, he just makes declarations. There are no photons either. Do you actually believe little packets of light travel through space? Yes, I believe they do. That's right. I believe little bits of radiation are emitted by radioactive materials. I believe that a sandblaster shoots sand. Yeah, I believe all of those things. Thanks for the compliments. To be complimented by a fool gives me pleasure, fool. Well, whatever that is. Obviously, I didn't compliment you, you retard. So he says, smarter way of saying things like blue thingies and red thingies, LOL, BTS. So more, again, I could play Feynman calling them corpuscles, or I could show different people using different rhetoric, and it's all just mockable, right? Because you know how to say it, you know how to describe something. You have no videos, you have nothing to say to the world to explain anything. You're just a shit talker, you stupid old creep. Let's go to his website. Bet his channel page. No content, I bet. No content. Zero. Zero subscribers, zero content, just a picture of some old turd. Brilliant. Alright, what I'm saying is there's something in the virtual particles you call an electron. So again, you think they're virtual, I don't. Has never been seen. Well, I don't know what you mean by seen. Yes, we can't see very small things, but we can deduce their existence from the fact that they leave a shadow, so to speak. And we've sort of seen the shadows of electrons almost. As far as an electron microscope goes, perhaps you could look this too. As it too uses a particle that no one can explain. Well, again, the very point is that it uses something that's not a force. It doesn't use a photon. Okay, it's using something being moved by photons. And that's quite obvious because the thing wouldn't work if they didn't know they were moving something bigger than a photon. So the whole thing relies on the electron actually bouncing off of something, and then they catch it. Okay, and then they have to use a kind of an algorithm to figure out, because of its motion, which way it's moving. Then they have to convert that into what would be the image. But I mean, it clearly can't work if there's no such thing that's called a material bit that has a charge that's called an electron. So you can keep saying electrons don't exist, but there's clearly a unique thing in the universe that has this negative charge that is propelled by force and has certain behavioral rules, and it's not a proton, it's not a photon, it's not something else, it's this thing, and it's always this thing. I mean, electrons are electrons are electrons are electrons. I mean, you're just being an asshole. Okay, anyway, they can't describe what it does. Yes, they can, very well, but they don't know, like you, what it is. Oh, they can describe what it does. Yeah, they know enough about what it is. I'm just saying, you're saying they don't, that we don't have any idea, and therefore we can't call it an electron. We clearly can call it an electron. It has unique properties. It behaves in unique ways that we can control and manipulate, and there's absolutely no reason not to call it an electron. It's identifiable as distinct list of properties and behaviors. There's no reason not to call it something. I mean, you know, you could have an animal, you know, walking around out in your yard in the night, and maybe you can't see everything about it, but there's a point where you can say, yeah, we can name it because it does the same thing. It climbs the tree and it does this and does that. It doesn't do what a monkey does. It doesn't do what a squirrel does. It does something different, and it's identifiable. Your stupid, idiotic claim that there's no electron is just retarded. All right, anyway, if you think there is a million of electrons running down power lines every day, well, again, that's not what they even claim. Nobody claims that a million electrons going down through the power lines. The point is the force is pushing electrons from positions. It's moving them out of atomic positions. All right, and the amount of force it takes to do that, it is the force that's moving down the wire. The amount of force it takes to drag those electrons represents a huge amount of energy. And so the electrons are just a byproduct of the stream that's moving them. So think of the electrons as rocks in the bottom of a stream, jackass. So there's a stream and there's rocks in the bottom, and the rocks start to tumble down the stream. You don't sit there and count, say, oh, you think a billion rocks are going down the stream. No, I know lots of water is going down the stream. The rocks moving is a symptom of the water, jackass. The electricity is the force between the electrons, and that is magnetism, douchebag. Jeez, you dumbass. Alright, if you think there's a million electrons running down the power lines every day, you are a total fool, which is obvious. Well, again, if you think it's not a something that's going down the power lines, you're the fucking idiot. If it's ether, why doesn't the electricity just fly through the ether? Why does it need the conductor? What is the conductor doing? What's its essential role, jack fucking ass? It's providing the electrons, douchebag. That's why does lightning strike the earth? Oh, it's because there's electrons created by ions, asshole. The electrons are the conduit for the force. The electrons mean that if you have one electron and it's far away, the force can't do much. But if you put another electron, then when you hit the force goes between the electrons, and now this electron will move. It creates the tension. There's no tension without the electrons. The electrons complete the circuit that the force travels through, asshole. Fucking rude, fucking old turd. Oh, it's more. Challenge. Explains this with your theory for biologists suggest that bird biology intersects with quantum mechanics. There's no point in explaining it. It's just bullshit. I mean, clearly some birds have actual physical magnets inside their brain cells, but there's no quantum mechanics connected to biology, you daydreaming lunatics. Oh, shit. This crap never ends. Alright, well, we'll save this one, I guess. Sorry, Russ, but yeah, I'm a little wiped. Let's see what it's on anyway. Curvature. Well, that's not going to be fun. Imagine that there's a hemisphere replacing a disk in the trapezoidal. So there exists a really straight line on the hemisphere. Oh, this will be so much fun to try to image your images in my head. Namely, the equator near the injunction with the rest of the whatever trampoline. Note that the equator on the Earth is a maximum circle. I'm not doing any of this. There isn't a complete theory of gravity. No one knows what causes. Well, again, that's exactly the point of this channel. Somebody does know, asshole. Yeah, I do. Alright, it's really fucking simple, douche. Oh, some models just make better predictions than others. Again, just predictions is all you care about. It doesn't matter that it's rational, that it fits the evidence, that it's doesn't have invisible men in it, or pixies, or magical forces, or space just disappears kind of nonsense. Yeah, that sort of matters. But again, these predictions, the predictions that are never proven to be even accurate. Now for visibility, I would suggest, I mean, they're predicting that photons, their prediction is that the explanation for the two-slit experiment is that photons go in, magically split in two instead of four, even though there's two slits now, right? So in the single slit they split in two, but in the double slit, no, they just split in two, not four. Because there's two slits, right? It would be 4 photons. No, only 1 photon for each slit. So when it's a single slit, 2 photons go out. When it's a double slit, only 1 photon for each slit. How come? Yeah, bullshit. That's how come. Let's see. There isn't any complete theory of gravity. No one knows what causes. Some models just make better predictions than others. Now for visibility, I would suggest you submit your work to academic institutions. Nobody will reject a theory with greater evidence than the previous ones. Well, you're deluded if you think that's how the world works. It's all what they can sell and what is popular. And the people who are controlling what gets reviewed are imbeciles. So how are they going to know when somebody has a right answer and deserves to have their paper reviewed? Oh, that's right, they're not going to know. So it's a waste of fucking time. The institutions are closed-minded and unyieldingly closed-minded. Religion is not part of the scientific method. It's all you have, frankly. But most scientists want mathematical evidence. Well, again, redoing the same math over and over again, as Einstein would say, only a retard does that and expects a different answer. I mean, most of the relationships are tied down pretty well. Now, I suppose I could write a better field equation than Einstein's, because obviously his has a whole bunch of unnecessary features, because he's trying to get to induction the hard way. Okay, and all his equations really doing. And many people, I mean, there's lots of mathematicians who realize that part of what Einstein added to Newton is just a recognition that the sun is precessing. See, Newton didn't go that far to figure out how much the sun was being moved by the other planets. He just did the planets being moved by the sun part. But the sun is actually precessing. And it's the sun's precession that's causing Mercury's precession. Not really a remarkable thing, right? And why would somebody want to redo that? So that's what interests you, that's what you find so interesting. Tiny micro fractional changes in predictive ability okay, that don't necessarily completely accurately connect to the phenomenon. So I could argue that in the two-slit math, again, just a simple error. You say the sine theta, the angle, is being created by this two photon phenomenon, and that these two photons are running a parallel line at these different angular positions, and so that this distance change is creating the fact that it's constructive in one place and destructive in another place. Well, the simple argument could be made that all that is an angle, and that anything could be causing that angle, like where between the two slits the photon went through. That angle difference. Multiples of that sine theta. And that's the only thing in the math that's obviously all the other variables are kind of standard. The width of the slit, the distance to the target, all those are standard. There's nothing else that's variable. There's nothing else that's interpretative. And the only part of the math that's interpretative, where they have to add a premise to the math to get sine theta. All the other things are obvious, right? The distance, the width, the wavelength of the light, all those things are obvious. They're not. You don't have to do anything to get the answers to those variables. You just pull out a ruler. It's easy. But the sine theta, you don't just pull out a ruler to get that angle. And anyway, and the point is that all that the experiment duplicates is that angle. It just takes that angle and does it twice, and then does the angle 3 times, and then does the angle 4 times, and does the angle 5 times to decide where the locations are. Absolutely nothing remarkable about that. Alright, well, that's probably enough. Oh, that wasn't way over enough. Way over enough. Alright, so until the next time and such. Okay, I appreciate you people who want to argue some of this, even listening to these videos all the way through. So I'll say thank you for doing that. But yeah, we have to have a different foundation for the conversation. Yeah, we have to be able to go through one point and another point and another point and label them and number them and say, okay, these are the points that are unresolved. So I ask of you to give me an explanation, and you can't just keep ignoring it and pretend that you've explained something when you haven't explained anything. So, I've made all these points and you don't respond to any. So that's not going to work. So I'm just saying, if you think you're convincing me, you're not even coming close. I'll just let you know. And in my opinion, you just keep providing me with more evidence, okay, that clearly you people are fanatics defending your own biases, and that's all this is about. Because it's obvious the Eddington experiment hasn't been conducted in some pristine manner. Fact. Okay. Fact that the other mechanisms for observing gravitational lensing, none of them are beyond reproach. None of them are, again, let's use evolution, the evidence for evolution as a comparison. None of them are even close to the evidence compiled for evolution. And we still haven't, as a human race, been able to declare evolution a fact. I mean, most of the world's population doesn't even believe evolution. With that pile of evidence, we don't even insist that somebody who we're going to allow to walk free doesn't even have to believe that. Even with that pile of evidence. And you obnoxious assholes are telling me that I'm being unreasonable because I don't think your answers to how the universe works make any sense at all. They just sound like made-up bullshit. Sci-fi nonsense. And I went looking for a better answer. That's the simple truth. I thought your answers were silly, and I said there's got to be a better answer. And with a couple of years' work, I found a better answer. And adding a couple of years more work, I improved on that answer dramatically. And in my opinion now, have a very competitive, challenging theory to your silly, UFO, God of the Gap bullshit. But go ahead, keep wasting your time. It's okay. Don't let me get you. No, don't let me stop you.